The kama came out of the smoke first. Two short Okinawan sickles spinning at the ends of a masked man's arms. This is the last act of American Ninja, and the camera has to give ground to keep both blades in frame. Earlier in the same picture, that man walked a line of ninja recruits and killed one with a look. In 1960, he had won the All-Okinawan Shorin-ryu free-sparring Grand Championship at 18. Cannon Films built this movie around a first-time lead with no martial arts training at all. The fights work anyway because of the man in the black hood. Mike Stone, the tournament fighter, Cannon hired to choreograph it, asked for him by name. His name is Tadashi Yamashita. The hood is the whole problem. He helped open the American Ninja cycle in 1980, and he is the villain of its biggest hit 5 years later. Hollywood hired him to threaten the hero, make the fights real, and be gone before the credits. There is a reason for that, and the reason has a name. A distributor handed it to him in 1975. It was not his own. Watch the Black Star Ninja arrive in American Ninja, and the film changes weight. Yamashita gets a proper introduction at the ninja camp. He runs a short karate display in front of his own recruits. Then he kills one of them, and the killing is delivered so flatly, it reads as administration. Everything around him is Cannon Films at full speed. The picture is shot in the Philippines on a budget of $1 million. The working title was American Warrior. The lead had never trained a day in his life. Cannon had announced Chuck Norris for the lead. Norris passed, and the reported reason is that he would not spend the third act with his face under a mask. So Menahem Golan and Yoram Globus hired a former model named Michael Dudikoff instead. Golan liked that he looked like a young James Dean. Then they handed the credibility problem to somebody else. That somebody was Mike Stone. Stone doubled Dudikoff in the ninja suit. He drilled him through the choreography, and he recommended Yamashita for the villain so the fights would be real on at least one side of the frame. It worked past anything Cannon had planned for. American Ninja opened on the 30th of August 1985 in 672 theaters. It took $3.2 million in 3 days and landed at number 4 in the country. Final domestic gross was $10.5 million against a $1 million budget. The video cassette business multiplied that again. Cannon had shot the thing as American Warrior and swapped the title midstream, because ninja were what the market wanted. 4 sequels followed. A franchise came out of it, so did a star. Steve James, the other trained martial artist in the main cast, barely gets to fight. Neither the franchise nor the star belonged to the man doing the actual martial arts. He supplied the danger, and then he supplied the corpse. This was the second time he had done that exact job for a much bigger name. The cosign on Yamashita is not from a critic. It is from Chuck Norris. 5 years before American Ninja, Yamashita played Sakura in the Octagon, and Sakura is the man Norris fights at the end. Norris was accelerating at that point, and he ran the fight work on his own pictures with his brother Aaron. This was the most ambitious film he had made, and Yamashita is who they put across from him for the finish. The Octagon opened in August 1980. Lee Van Cleef is in support. A young Australian named Richard Norton makes his screen debut as the silent enforcer Kyo. It took $9.8 million in rentals, which was a genuine hit. It is generally treated as the first major American film built entirely around ninja. That puts it a year ahead of Enter the Ninja and half a decade ahead of the Cannon boom. Norris plays a retired karate champion. He was one in real life, which is the point of casting him. Across the mat is a genuine Okinawan title holder playing a fictional one. The finale is Norris against Yamashita, brother against brother, inside a burning compound. The production reportedly burned the set because that came cheaper than taking it apart. Fighting Stars magazine is reported to have later ranked that fight 13th on a list of the 25 greatest ever filmed. Yamashita shaped action beyond his own scenes too, including the work that made Norton look lethal in his first job. Gene Siskel gave it 2.5 stars in the Chicago Tribune and allowed that it had more story than the genre usually bothered with. So the American Ninja cycle has one recurring body in it. He helped open it in 1980 before Enter the Ninja and the Cannon Trilogy that followed, and then he anchored its biggest hit at the commercial peak in 1985. Both times, Yamashita supplied the last danger and the American star took the win. Norris, a legitimate champion in his own right, stabs him. Dudikoff, trained for the shoot, cuts him down. The industry had found a use for him and never revised it. American audiences did not know the rest. This man had already carried 3 films of his own with his name above the title. 7,000 people stood up. The year was 1973. The venue was the Pro-Am Karate Tournament in Los Angeles. Yamashita had just finished a kobudo demonstration, Okinawan weapons, in front of a crowd that came to watch sport fighting. That ovation is the hinge of his life in America. It is repeated in every account of him, though it is sourced to the people around him rather than to any program. Behind it sat something harder. He was born in Japan in 1942. His father died when he was 3. He and his mother moved to Okinawa when he was 8, onto an island still reassembling itself after the war. By his own account, repeated for 50 years, he was the roughest child in his school. He fought other students. He fought teachers. The PTA president happened to run a karate dojo. He collected the boy after school, absorbed his attempt to fight him, and took him to the dojo instead of home. Yamashita was 11. He trained under Shuguro Nakazato of the Shorin-ryu Shorinkan. He trained under Shimpo Matayoshi, who founded the Zen Okinawa Kobudo Renmei. He tested before Chosin Chibana, who was about as close to a source point as Okinawan karate has. Black belt at 16, grand champion at 18, 7th Dan in 1968, promoted in front of Nakazato and Chibana together. His organization still calls that rank unprecedented for his age in Japan, though no independent record confirms it. He came to the United States in the mid-60s and became a citizen. By 1967, he had opened his first dojo in Mishawaka, Indiana. In 1970, Nakazato put him at the head of Shorin-ryu Shorinkan for the entire country. He was 28. In 1972, he moved to California, which is where the story turns commercial. Ed Parker and Mike Stone noticed him almost immediately. A year later, 7,000 people were on their feet. Talent agents were in that building. They were not shopping for a karate master. They were shopping for the next Bruce Lee, and Bruce Lee had months to live. Toei Company had just made serious international money with Sonny Chiba and the Street Fighter. They wanted another one. They signed Yamashita and built a trilogy around him. Za Karate came in 1974, a sequel the same year, a third in 1975. Yukio Noda directed all three. All three were stocked with genuine competition fighters instead of stunt performers. Bolo Jung, fresh off Enter the Dragon, turns up in the second one as a killer called Dracula. Yamashita is the lead in every frame. He plays a version of himself, an Ohio farm boy who enters a tournament in Kyoto for prize money, gets targeted by mobsters, and is blinded before the rematch. The choreography runs in long takes, which was unusual for Japanese action of that period. Most productions cut fast because the actors could not sustain a phrase. Noda held the shot because his lead could. That decision is visible in the restorations, and it is the reason the trilogy has aged better than its reputation. New Line Cinema bought the American rights in 1975. They considered releasing it as Captain Karate. What they went with instead was Bronson Lee Champion, a real Okinawan Grand Champion, signed by a major Japanese studio to headline his own trilogy, was sold to the United States as a composite of Charles Bronson and a man who had been dead for 2 years. The American cut ran 79 minutes against the Japanese 86, 7 minutes gone from a film whose entire selling point was the man doing the fighting. In the second film, he spends most of the runtime blinded, fighting by sound, which is Zatoichi with a karate gi. Bolo Jung is one of the men he has to hear coming. This is a leading man doing leading man work. It reached America as knockoff product under a knockoff name, with the best material removed. For years afterward, American releases billed him as Bronson Lee. The posters did not say Tadashi Yamashita anywhere. The Bruce Lee connection needs a harder look because the version in circulation overshoots. His own biographies say he taught Bruce Lee to use the Nunchaku. For years, an uncited line on his Wikipedia page said it too. What is documented is Dan Inosanto. He handed Lee his first pair in 1964, taught him the basics, and watched him turn frightening with it inside 3 months. Inosanto has told that story himself on camera, and the standard Bruce Lee literature backs him. Yamashita moved to Los Angeles in 1972 and knew Lee. He is a real Okinawan kobudo authority, and he may well have shown Lee things afterward that nobody wrote down. What will not hold is the big version, the one where Yamashita is the man who taught Bruce Lee the nunchaku. That claim traces to Yamashita's own camp and stops there. The record does confirm something stranger. Pull the full credits on Enter the Dragon, the most successful martial arts film ever made, and he is in them. His billing reads karateka in 16mm footage, uncredited. He is in the picture. He is demonstration film, unnamed, inside the movie that rebuilt the entire genre. Nobody had to lie for a myth to grow in a gap that size. Promotional biographies accumulate around men nobody bothers to interview. The gap is the story. Yamashita landed in Hollywood at the moment when the only commercially legible role for an Asian martial artist was a version of a dead man. Sho Kosugi was 6 years younger and photographed as the ninja. Canon gave him 3 pictures, then he took the persona to another studio and kept going. Kosugi had trained in Japan and he could fight, so this was never about who was more real. It was about who read as the fantasy. The fantasy was Japanese, silent, and hooded. Yamashita was Okinawan, which is a different island and a different lineage, and he had spent 20 years teaching Americans to tell the difference. American production had one part available to a man like that. It was the man who loses the last fight, and he was very good at it, and being good at it is what kept him there. Line up his 2 credits from 1993. and the whole shape of it becomes visible. That year, American Ninja 5 went straight to video. Canon was collapsing under its debts, and the film had been shot as American Dragons before somebody stapled the franchise onto it. Yamashita opens that movie. He trains David Bradley in the first minutes, and he is billed as himself, and his name is on the picture again behind the camera as martial arts coordinator. It is recognition of a sort. It lasts a few minutes in a sequel that was not a sequel at the end of a company. That same year, Rising Sun opened in July. Philip Kaufman directed it from Michael Crichton's novel. Sean Connery and Wesley Snipes were on the poster. 20th Century Fox spent $40 million on it. It grossed $107 million worldwide. The whole picture is about Japanese power in America, which was the anxiety Crichton was selling that decade. Yamashita is in it. His credit reads Nakamoto Yakuza. The character does not get a name. He stands in those rooms alongside Fumio Demura and Takayuki Kubota, two more of the highest-ranked karate men in the country, all three cast as furniture in a movie about Japanese people. 8 years earlier, he had been the reason a franchise existed. Gymkata had used him as an Eastern trainer. Knight Rider used him twice, uncredited, once as a ninja assassin and once as a bouncer. The pattern holds across 20 years of credits. He arrives, he is dangerous, he is removed. The industry had run its ninja fever, taken the money, and kept the masks. It discarded the men who made the masks convincing. He was 51 years old, the ninja pictures were finished, canon was gone, sold off to cover what it owed. The one American genre that had ever needed him had closed, and it closed without giving him a lead. What he did about that is the part nobody covers because it happened in strip malls instead of on screens. He kept the dojos. Suibukan of Indiana, the school he opened in 1967, is still running, one of the oldest karate dojos in America. He built the Yamashita International Budo Association on top of it, with affiliated schools in 9 states. He holds 10th dan in both Karate-Do and Kobudo and still runs the gradings himself in his 80s in person. The system he assembled out of all of it is called Sukendo, the fist that flows like water. The idea inside it is that the block and the strike are one motion rather than two, which is an Okinawan argument and not a movie one. That is the axis practitioners judge him on, and it has nothing to do with the hood. To the people in the G, he is a Matayoshi weapons lineage holder in a country that has very few. He wrote the Ohara manuals on Shorin-ryu and on tonfa that a whole generation of American black belts learned the weapons from, back when there was no other way to see the material without flying to Naha. He carried Nakazato's line into 9 states and Matayoshi's kobudo into the hands of people who would otherwise never have touched eisei. He has been running seminars in Greece and South America for decades, and he still keeps a line back to Okinawa. He once put a crowd on its feet doing Nunchaku blindfolded, which is a stunt until you understand that the weapon injures the man holding it more often than anyone else in the room. None of that is in a movie. All of it is why the men who actually know the material talk about him the way the rest of the world talks about the people he lost to on screen. The film work paid for the dojos. The dojos outlasted the film work. He is 84, and he still gets on planes to grade them himself. Then, in late 2025, Severin Films announced a 4K restoration of the Za Karate trilogy from the original negatives. Yamashita sat down and recorded the commentaries himself. The set is titled the Bronson Lee Za Karate Collection. 50 years after a distributor replaced his name with 2 borrowed ones, the name on the box is still Bronson Lee, and the man it was taken from is the one explaining the fights. He never got the American lead, and at this point, he is not waiting on one. The fights he was hired to lose remain one of the main reasons anybody still watches those pictures at all.